and that's the request for proposal. And that is, unlike the invitation for bid, where the specifications are exact, here, we're not quite sure what it is we want. We know we're at point A and we want to get to point B, but the steps in between are not quite exact about. So our specifications aren't very precise. They allow for some options. They allow for some creativity. They allow for some truly creative options or offerings from you folks in the business of providing whatever it is we're looking for. And so, for instance, if we wanted to have, I don't know, is there any software companies here today? Welcome. There's always at least one. What company are you with? And what do you do?
We provide IT financial services.
That's pretty general.
We do a full mastery of web development, data architecture.
Okay. Web development, architecture, that kind of stuff. And I'm sure you do some other things too. I appreciate you allowing me to put you on the spot. Migration. Oh, that's always a fun topic in the IT world. That's almost as interesting as purchasing. Let's use them as an example. If we needed to migrate from this system, and I'm probably speaking the wrong lingo, I'm not an IT person, so I apologize if I really butcher this, but bear with me. For those of us who are non-IT folks, just try to follow along.
The time is 10 o'clock a.m.
Thank you. Thanks to our communication guys for that reminder. Migration. If we're in, and I don't know, an XYZ system currently, and we needed to migrate over to some other system that was better, faster, more efficient, took up less space, so on and so forth, that's the kind of thing where we would use the request for proposal process. We know that what we have, we know where we're at, we know kind of what it is we want. We want better, faster, cheaper, less space, etc. But what it is that will get us there, how we get there, gosh, we really don't know. And so that's really what a request for proposal process is. A bid process is, I want a purple Cadillac, fuzzy dice, spinning chrome wheels, etc. Request for proposal, I just want to get here. Tell me how you will take me there. And then we look at things beyond price for the request for proposal process. We look at your experience. How long have you been in business? We look at your references. What other like projects have you done? And we call those references. And folks, for those of you that offer references to potential business customers, I cannot tell you enough, and I cannot emphasize enough. Make sure your references are good, strong, and valid. You'd be amazed at how many times we receive bids and proposals, we call references, and the numbers aren't good. Now that's a reflection on you. That's your reference that you gave us, and that number is not good. Or Joe Smith hasn't been with the company for the last 5 years. How can I check your reference to make sure you're a responsible firm? Or worse yet, Joe Smith actually picks up the phone, it's a good number, and Joe's still there. And he proceeds to tell me how horrible you are. It's your reference that you provide to me. Now, I appreciate the candidness. Don't misunderstand me. That always makes my job easier, my staff's jobs easier, to realize that we're not dealing with a very reputable firm when the reference that they provide says they're not a very reputable firm. But by the same token, this is your opportunity to sell to us. Make sure it's a good one. We want it to be a good one. We want you to be represented well, and we want you to be represented accurately as a potential business customer. So anyway, getting back to the request for proposals. Does everybody understand the difference between the straightforward invitation for bid and the not so straightforward request for proposal? Is there any questions or distinctions about the two, or about the distinctions between the two? Okay, very good. Proposals are evaluated here in Gwinnett County by an evaluation team of at least 3 members, and it's at least 3, and we have at least one representative who probably is not a subject matter expert. People like myself, for instance. Again, if we're talking about constructing a fire station or building a road or migrating IT servers over, promise you, I can read plain English, but beyond that, the specificity of the engineering and the architecture and the design and everything. I understand English, but beyond that, I don't. So there is, on every evaluation team, there is one non-interested, probably non-expert party on the evaluation team. And the reason we have that is why? So that we don't have the experts with their biases saying we want to award to this particular company. We have an independent, new perspective evaluating those proposals as well. We obviously have subject matter experts on the evaluation team. After all, you know, you don't want non-subject matter folks deciding who's going to build the bridge that we're all going to drive over after it's built. And then we also have some community of interest folks. Those folks that perhaps it's an IT project. We may have some folks on the court side of the house that have an interest in that particular contract. They may not be affected by it directly, but perhaps indirectly, and so we have some community of interest folks. But anyway, we have at least 3 folks on our evaluation teams. And so there is a human factor in the evaluation of proposals. Cost, as I've stated, is only one factor. Cost is obviously very important. But for a typical proposal, cost is anywhere from 10 to maybe 25, 30% of the overall evaluation. We want to consider cost. You have to consider cost. But with a proposal, cost is only a small factor, typically, of the overall picture. We want to make sure we have a good firm. We want to make sure that we have the most efficient process to convert our data from A to Z, so on and so forth. And so cost is just a small factor. And then, like the invitation for bid, departments make a recommendation. The board makes the award. The recommendation, however, is not based upon the lowest responsive and responsible price. The recommendation is based upon the highest scoring proposal, where cost is just one of the factors that we evaluate. So those are the 3 basic procurement methods that we use here in Gwinnett County, and that's probably true for any governmental agency using those 3 basic types. Now, some of the specificity may change from county to county, city to city, state to state, but in general, those are the 3 basic types of procurement. Is there any questions about any of those 3?
Right here.
Yes, sir.
First of all, the request for proposals, is that all in writing, or do you get, or does the one that's doing the bid, do they get the opportunity to sit down and ask questions, thorough questions? Because sometimes you might have the specifications down, but there's little nuances that could go either way,
Yes.
one way or the other. So do we actually get a chance to sit down and ask you questions?
Question is, does the business community get a chance to ask us questions about our solicitation document? And the answer is yes. First of all, it is always in writing. Always in writing, okay? Second of all, especially for requests for proposals, we always have what's called a pre-proposal conference. And that's the opportunity for us to have an open dialogue, an open meeting, published date and time when it will be. And then those folks in the business community that are interested in that contract will come, ask questions, receive clarifications, whatever the dialogue yields. From that dialogue, from that meeting, we'll also issue an addendum. An addendum to the original specifications, the original document. An addendum is nothing more than an additional document that either clarifies, answers questions, better defines. We might add or delete some specifications depending upon that dialogue that we had at our pre-proposal conference, so on and so forth. And so there is typically a step there in the RFP process, and there's also typically a step in the invitation for bid process as well. With a straightforward bid, there isn't always a pre-bid conference, again, that meeting, that dialogue, but oftentimes there is. But regardless of whether there is or isn't a pre-whatever conference, you always have the opportunity to pick up the phone and call the purchasing agent and say, hey, I have a question. On page 17, it says, I don't understand. On page 17, it says A, and on page 19, it says B. They seem to be in contradiction with one another. Can you clarify that for me? We will always release those types of clarifications or answers in an addendum. Again, to put it in writing, make it official part of the document, and then ultimately it becomes the part and parcel of the contract itself once it gets awarded. Okay?
I have one other question, and I realize you said that.
Yes, sir, that's fine.
Say, for instance, you have an employee, all right, Kathy or Anne Marie sitting back here has been working with me for years in the printing business. They wanted to start a woman-owned business in a copying business, and they'll be working directly with me on a lot of stuff. All right, how are they going to be able to give referrals if they're just starting up their business? They, you know, while they're working with me, they might have done $10,000 a week for X company. But all of a sudden, now that they're with their own company, starting their own company, they can't actually say our company has done $10,000 a week with them. We actually have no referrals because we hadn't done any business. We just started.
Okay.
How do you get around that?
Now, when you say that there's no referrals, are you talking about their company or your company, sir?
Their company.
Their company.
Right. They just started.
Okay.
All right, I'm in the printing business. They decide they want to go into a copying business and sell printing also. But they have not really done that much stuff. They might, you know, they might do $300 a week, but they're going after $10,000 contract. They have no basis to say we've done this before because under their new business, they have not. Even though they're going to be working directly with me and using some of my capabilities, their business will not have that. Am I making myself clear there?
Absolutely, and it's a very good point, very good question. A couple of things in response to that. First of all, and I think everybody would agree, depending upon the complexity of the item or services that we're buying, our requirements increase as the complexity increase. By that, I'm going back to my bridge example. I don't want to have Mary's construction company who just opened up shop yesterday building my bridge. I don't want to be her first customer. Not only as a consumer do I not want that, but I also don't want that as a driver in Gwinnett County that's going to be driving over that bridge. And so our requirements for somebody that's going to build a bridge for us may be 5 years in business, 5 like projects in the last 3 years, that kind of thing. And so the greater the complexity, the greater our requirements. Now when you talk about printing publications for us or whatever the printing job may be, the reality is we don't necessarily need to have that surety, that bond capacity for somebody to print, I don't know, our budget document for us, for instance. And so the fact that they may have been in the printing business for the last 5 years, working for somebody else, but they just opened up shop doing their own thing today, that may indeed suffice for that particular contract. And so again, what we take a look at is what's the complexity of what it is we need? What are the insurance or bonding requirements, if any? And for a printing job, a straightforward printing job, a document, chances are we would need zero insurance, zero bonds, zero liability there. If Mary's company doesn't fulfill that, printing that document for us, is there any ramifications? If their company can't handle our business, if they go out of business during the middle of that project, are there any ramifications for that? A straightforward printing project, probably not. And so there are plenty of opportunities for small businesses, folks that have been in the field for a while, who suddenly strike out on their own. There's plenty of opportunities for small businesses. And we'll be able to discuss that in greater detail at our 2 o'clock workshop this afternoon for small businesses. But it's a great point and it's a great question, and I hope I answered it. Okay, very good. Yes, sir.
My name is Karthik. I'm from Think Development. In one of the RFP, there is a well-defined structure of points system. And one of the criteria is 10 points for on-site interviews. And the county reserves the right to conduct the interview or not for a particular firm. If I don't get a chance for the interview, do I lose the 10 points or how does it work?
It's a very good point. Within our proposal document or even our bid document,
Right.
we often have the qualifications. Here's the minimums that you must meet. When we do a request for proposal, we also have the evaluation criteria. We tell you what the rules of the game are going to be so that you in your infinite sales wisdom can produce a proposal document that is most advantageous for selling your services or your goods to us based upon our evaluation criteria. Oftentimes you'll see in there, cost is 20%, 20 points out of 100. Methodology, how are you going to get us from point A to point B? Methodology may be 20, 25% of the evaluation. Experience, references, 10, 15, 20%, so on and so forth. And so all of those things add up to 100%. And so the evaluation criteria is spelled out. Out of 100 points, each area so many points. Oftentimes you'll see in there that Gwinnett County reserves the right to shortlist and conduct presentations or interviews. And what does that mean? That essentially means that we'll take a look at the evaluation results based upon those 100 points. And then if we shortlist, or if we need additional clarifications, or if we have additional answers, or answers that we need, questions that we need answers for, then we may have an interview or a presentation opportunity. And so what that means is for those folks that make that short list, you have, out of a possible 10 points, you'll have some additional points that will be added to your overall score. For those folks that are not invited to that presentation, not invited to that interview, that essentially means that based upon the 100-point evaluation, you did not make that short list. You were not in the top scoring firms. So that's essentially what that means. Does that answer your question?
Excellent. Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Scott. My name's Anna Marie with Merchant Services. And this past couple weeks, you guys had an e-quote, and it was for the health county or health department. Then you had an addendum. Then all of a sudden, it was canceled. Why do e-quotes get canceled?
And I'm going to expand upon that question, and the answer, or the question, I'm going to expand upon it and ask the question: why do solicitations get canceled? Because we not only have quotes, we sometimes have bids, and we sometimes have proposals that get canceled as well. And the answer can be for a number of different reasons. Number one, we may find that our specifications were too loose. And you have Scott Callan's bridge building company that just incorporated yesterday after I got the solicitation document, said, you know, that's a $5 million construction project. I'd like to have a $5 million contract, and so I go up to license and revenue and pay my $35 or whatever it is and get my license. So the specifications are too loose. And we find that we're getting a very wide array of proposals in hand or bids in hand that from folks that really aren't qualified to do the work. And so we cancel that solicitation and we work on our specifications. We may find that our specifications are too restrictive. You know, we asked for IBM servers, and gosh, that company back there doesn't do IBM, and nobody else does IBM except IBM, and so we find that our specifications are too restrictive. And so we may cancel that solicitation, work on our specifications, and release it. We may also find, and imagine this in a government environment, we may also find that things change. From the time that we release that solicitation till the time that we're ready to award it, perhaps some things have changed. Budgets have changed. We don't have the money for it anymore. We don't have the political will for that project anymore. There's a number of different reasons why solicitations will get rejected or canceled. And so I don't have any specificity for that particular example, but in general, it does happen. I don't want to say all the time, but it does happen rather frequently. I probably have to cancel or reject probably once or twice a month for solicitations that we do. Good question. Anything else? Let's move along.